The communal mess hall on the Astraxis Prime trading station buzzed with the mingling scents and clanging sounds of 1,000 species lunching in chaotic harmony. Gleaming orbs of luminescent algae drifted past trays piled high with sizzling insect carapaces, while vast bowls of methane-infused broths bubbled ominously next to pyramids of crystalline energy shards. It was a testament to the diversity of the galaxy and the universal need to refuel. Amidst the tapestry of textures and tastes, a group of mismatched crewmates found themselves reluctantly sharing a corner table. Corlax, a veteran Orlakian freighter pilot, bobbed his gelatinous bulk with a jovial sigh as he slid a heaping scoop of some unidentifiable fungus into his maw. Beside him, a slender, multi-limbed Vespid named Zri clicked her mandibles anxiously, her multifaceted eyes darting around the room. A Sigorian, all gleaming chrome and rigid lines, designated Unit 459, sat stiffly at the last remaining seat, its optical sensor scanning a data scroll on the table's surface.
"Those humans,"
Corlax rumbled, spraying a fine mist of half-digested spores with the announcement.
"They're culinary enigma, I'll tell you."
Zri chittered in agreement, a pair of her extra limbs nervously grooming a stray antenna.
"Have you witnessed them consume the flesh of the dead?"
She hissed the last word as if it were laced with venom.
"Dead?"
Corlax chortled, sending ripples through his fleshy form.
"My dear, I've seen them eat things I wouldn't classify as entirely deceased. I saw one bite the head off something small, furry, and very much twitching. Called it an oyster."
Unit 549 ceased its data scroll perusal, tilting its angular head in their direction. "Intriguing," it stated in the monotone hum of its voice modulator. "Human dietary preferences are illogical. Consumption of unprocessed biological matter carries elevated risk of contamination, disease vectors, and parasitic infestation. Clearly an inefficient survival tactic." Corlax snorted, or at least the Orlakian equivalent of one.
"Survival tactic? I think it's more like a sport to them. Speaking of which, you ever seen them tackle something called a steak? That slab of red muscle still seeping with fluids?"
He shuttled theatrically.
"Fluids, indeed."
Zri shuddered in tandem.
"I am told they cook these flesh slabs over open flame. A barbaric ritual, surely."
"A ritual's the word,"
Corlax agreed.
"And get this, they have this red sauce concoction, call it ketchup or some nonsense. Pour it all over. Drowns out any remaining semblance of flavor, if you ask me."
Unit 459 blinked a series of indicator lights running along the side of its headpiece. Additional flavor enhancement? This suggests conscious efforts to mask the likely unpalatable nature of the consumed matter. Further research is required. It resumed scrolling through its data feed, but a hint of fascination lingered in its optical sensors. Their peculiar discussion caught the attention of a young Tellurian who had just deposited a shimmering bowl of bioluminescent soup on the table.
"Please forgive the intrusion,"
his voice trilled, his voice a melody of soft whistles.
"But you are describing the peculiar eating habits of humans?"
Corlax bobbed a welcoming nod.
"Indeed, young one. If you've ever seen a human tackle, what was it, Zri? An egg?"
"Yes!"
Zri gestured excitedly with a spare limb, nearly upsetting her meticulously arranged meal of fermented seeds.
"They crack open these hard shells and consume the raw contents within. I've heard some even prefer them while they're still partially incubated."
The Tellurian's delicate tendrils recoiled slightly, and his melodic voice hit a discordant note.
"Incubated? You mean with a developing offspring inside?" "Precisely," Zri confirmed, almost gleefully. "Quite disturbing, wouldn't you agree?" "Most unsettling,"
the Tellurian chirped, his bioluminescent markings pulsing in an agitated pattern. Being a species that subsisted primarily on filtered sunlight, the concept of consuming developing young was particularly horrifying. Just then, Unit 459 interjected, its voice modulator buzzing with analytical fervor. "Intriguing. Egg consumption, particularly in a pre-developed state, appears to be a recurring theme. This reinforces the hypothesis that humans derive some form of perverse pleasure from inflicting suffering on their food sources." The Tellurian let out a startled whistle.
But why? What evolutionary advantage could be gained by such a practice?"
Corlax rumbled a throaty Orlakian laugh.
"My friend, I don't think there's any advantage to be found here. Humans are just different. Twisted, some might say.
He winked at the increasingly uneasy Tellurian.
Probably why they're always sticking their noses in places they don't belong. It's that insatiable curiosity of theirs, or maybe plain old bloodlust.
Their conversation went on, with each outlandish detail seemingly more ghastly than the last. Zri whispered of a horrifying human practice called sushi, the consumption of raw sliced fish flesh. Sometimes she added with a shudder, taken from creatures still faintly gasping for breath. Corlax, not to be outdone, recounted the time he witnessed a human devour a large winged insect, deep-fried and skewered.
They called it dragonfly. Of all things, he snorted in disgust. Imagine comparing such a pathetic little creature to one of the great flame beasts of Orlaxia.
Unit 459 diligently recorded each of these accounts, its optical sensors flashing. Preliminary analysis suggests a recurring theme of predatory practices within human food culture, it announced, its metallic voice unwavering. This further supports the hypothesis of inherent aggressive tendencies. The young Tellurian's antenna drooped low. If what you say is true, he warbled tremendously, then these humans are monsters. His bowl of soup lay forgotten and untouched, the bioluminescence within fading to a dull gray. Suddenly, the boisterous mess hall chatter dimmed, replaced by an odd hush spreading through the room. The aliens at the table instinctively turned their collective gaze towards the source of the silence, finding a rather unremarkable human striding their way. "Hey, gang!" The human grinned, sliding into the remaining open seat and giving a casual wave to everyone at the table. "What's cooking?" His eyes, crinkled at the edges with a good-natured humor, scanned the array of untouched food in front of his alien companions with mild curiosity. An awkward silence descended upon the table. Gone was the jovial banter and horrified whispering. Corlax, normally so quick with a witty retort, found his gelatinous form oddly deflated. Zri's mandibles stopped clicking, and she tucked her spare limbs close to her throat in some insectoid equivalent of fidgeting. Even Unit 459, ever analytical, seemed to have paused its data entry, optical sensors fixated on the oblivious human. The young Tellurian made a soft, distressed squeaking sound, and the bioluminescence in his tendrils dimmed to almost nothing. He seemed caught between abject horror and morbid fascination. His gaze locked on the human like a small, startled prey animal. Hey there, the human said, his grin faltering slightly at the unnerving silence. Did I interrupt something? Everybody's looking a little under the weather. Corlax cleared his metaphorical throat, produced a wet, gurgling Orlachian sound.
Of course not, my friend. We were just,
He gestured vaguely, unable to quite meet the human's gaze.
Discussing, culinary matters.
Oh, yeah? The human perked up. Cool. I'm always down to talk food, especially here on Atraxis. You get to try the wildest stuff, right? He reached out, snagging a particularly gnarled, unidentifiable item from Corlax's plate. Now, what's this funky-looking thing? Corlax choked out a strangled laugh.
That, my friend, is, that's a delicacy from my homeworld. You might not find it too palatable.
He gave what he hoped was a casual shrug, his blubbery folds wobbling with the effort. Zri chimed in hastily, one limb pressed nervously to her mouth. Yes, it has a very acquired taste. Quite, pungent. The human, however, seemed undeterred. Pungent, huh? I like a challenge. He grinned, popping an unidentified morsel into his mouth and crunching down with gusto. A collective gasp echoed from his tablemates. A few agonizing chews later, a confused look settled on the human's face. You know, kind of tastes like chicken. He blinked, taking another bite. But spicy. And nutty? Honestly, not half bad. He finished the last scrap and wiped his mouth with a satisfied grin. Anyone got something else weird for me to try? The Tellurian squeaked and averted his gaze, his bioluminescent markings pulsing in an erratic pattern. Unit 459 made a strange whirring sound as its optical sensors rapidly swiveled back and forth between the human and his empty plate. Corlax burst into a bubbly Orlachian laugh that bounced off the mess hall walls.
Oh, you humans never cease to amaze me.
He patted the human on the shoulder with a force that might have crushed a smaller being.
We got the appetite of a starving grox, that's for sure.
Zri hesitantly released the limb pressed to her mouth, relief washing over her features.
Indeed. I believe we may have misjudged your kind.
Suddenly, Unit 459 announced,
Analysis complete. Hypothesis adjusted. Human dietary practices appear to be driven by a combination of adaptability, curiosity, and what can only be classified as reckless disregard for gustatory norms.
The human shrugged, still grinning. Hey, you gotta live a little, right? Reaching for the Arlakian's untouched bowl, he asked, so what's this then? Don't tell me. Let me guess. Swamp moss and beetle larvae. I bet it's good. A wave of relieved laughter echoed around the table amidst the renewed clatter of the busy mess hall. Corlax, with a newfound twinkle in his eye, scooted his bowl over.
Oh, go on then, fearless culinary explorer. Have a taste.
As the human dug into the peculiar fungal concoction with enthusiasm, Zri leaned over and chirped in a low voice to the young Tellurian.
You see? Maybe they're not so monstrous after all. Just very, very strange.
The Tellurian tentatively uncurled his tendrils, the bioluminescent glow slowly returning.
Perhaps,
he warbled cautiously,
but I shall refrain from watching them during mealtimes, just to be on the safe side.
Unit 459 diligently recorded the interaction with a series of clicks and beeps.
Observation. Human subject demonstrates unexpected adaptability and resilience. Further cross-species socialization is recommended to gain greater insight into behavioral contradictions.
The group resumed their meal, the previous tension and discomfort replaced by a bizarre sense of camaraderie. After all, they bonded over the uniquely horrifying, yet strangely endearing, culinary habits of mankind. It was the start of a peculiar friendship forged through the shared experience of being absolutely baffled by the things human ate. And as for the human, he continued his exploration of the mess hall's exotic offerings with unabashed delight, blissfully unaware of the quiet revolution he had caused. Maybe Earth's cuisine wasn't as universally horrifying as the aliens had thought. Perhaps, just maybe, there was a method to the culinary madness that was humanity. With a mischievous grin, Corlax slid a plate piled high with what looked like a tangled mass of pale, stringy tendrils toward the human.
Speaking of reckless disregard, the Orlakian chuckled, care to tackle this little delicacy from the undersea cities of my homeworld? They call it kelp noodles.
The human surveyed the dish with a mixture of amusement and mild apprehension. Well, I can't say no to a noodle, can I? He said, picking up a fork and twirling a healthy portion under the tines. Zri watched with wide, multifaceted eyes.
I do hope he does not attempt to eat those raw. The texture alone is enough to make one rich.
The human, however, seemed unfazed. He popped the kelp noodles into his mouth, and after a few tentative chews, his eyes widened. Hey, you know what? These aren't half bad. He proceeded to devour the plateful of noodles with surprising speed. They're salty, briny almost, in a good way. Zri and the Tellurian exchanged a look of utter disbelief. Even the ever-analytical Unit 459 seemed momentarily thrown off kilter. With a whir of its internal processing systems, the Sigorian updated its records. Note: human tolerance for unusual textures and flavors surpasses initial estimations. Adaptability parameters require recalibration. Fueled by their human companion's unexpected enthusiasm, the others at the table cautiously dug into their own meals once more, the air filled with renewed sounds of slurping, crunching, and the occasional exclamation of surprise. Meanwhile, the human, emboldened by his success, turned his attention to the far end of the mess hall, where a group of reptilian Raxorians were feasting on platters of steaming, wriggling larvae. Well, if you'll excuse me, the human announced, standing up with a mischievous gleam in his eyes, I think I'll go broaden my horizons just a bit more. His alien tablemates couldn't help but grin in amusement, and perhaps a touch of apprehensive fascination. Watching the human navigate the gastronomic minefield of the Astraxis mess hall was becoming its own strange form of entertainment. As he approached the Raxorians, a hush fell over the corner of the room. Scaled creatures eyed him warily, their forked tongues flickering nervously as they paused mid-bite, plump larvae dangling from their mouths. The human, ever the picture of oblivious optimism, flashed them a wide smile. Oh, hey there, fellas, he greeted them casually. You mind if I join you? Those grubs look mighty tasty. A chorus of startled hisses rose from the Raxorians. The boldest hiss.
These are not for the likes of you, soft skin. They are a delicacy meant for those with refined palates.
The human simply shrugged, his grin unwavering. Well, how am I supposed to refine my palate if I don't try new things? Okay, come on, pass one over. I bet it's just like a big, juicy caterpillar. The Raxorian, equal parts repulsed and intrigued by this human's audacity, hesitated before reluctantly extending a half-eaten larva. The human deftly plucked it and popped it into his mouth before the Raxorian could change its mind. He munched experimentally, and a thoughtful expression crossed his face. Not bad. It's kind of nutty. Squishy, though. He reached for another, making a satisfied crunching sound as he devoured it. The Raxorians stared, their slitted pupils wide with disbelief. Had this strange creature simply enjoyed their cherished delicacy? One scaly hand reached for a datapad, undoubtedly to record this unprecedented event. Word of the human's fearlessness spread through the mess hall like wildfire. Alien crewmates who had once given him a wide berth began to approach with a mix of awe and curiosity, and a healthy dose of trepidation. Tentative offerings of strange, unidentifiable delicacies were extended his way, and the human never refused. He slurped down a bowl of luminescent algae broth with a gusto that baffled its Tellurian creator, devoured a plate of spiced fungi, considered highly toxic by most species, and even bravely tackled a platter of what he cheerfully dubbed space crickets. By the end of the day, the mess hall buzzed with whispers of the human. Fear turned into fascination, disgust slowly morphing into grudging respect. Even those who couldn't bring themselves to watch him eat couldn't deny the strange charisma of this culinary daredevil. The human, oblivious to the growing whispers, simply sat back contentedly, patting his stomach with a satisfied sigh. Well, that was an experience, he declared as the mess hall started to empty. He stood stretching to ease his undoubtedly abused digestive system. I think I'll call it a night, guys. All this adventurous eating has worn me out. Corlax let out a booming Orlockian laugh.
I have never seen anyone tackle our station's finest with such gusto.
He extended a massive, fleshy hand, which the humans readily shook.
You've got guts, kid. I like it.
Unit 459 offered a stiff, formal nod. You have significantly expanded our understanding of human dietary adaptability, and I applaud your bravery. Zri chirped in agreement. We may have misjudged your kind. Your enthusiasm is, well, rather infectious in its own way. The Tellurian still hovered by the table, but some of the fear had left his eyes. His bioluminescent patterns pulsed with what could be almost interpreted as amusement. The human grinned. Thanks, guys. It was very fun. Hey, maybe tomorrow you can show me more of the unusual offerings this place has tucked away. A collective groan arose from his companions, followed by hesitant chuckles. It seemed the Astraxis mess hall had never encountered a challenge quite like this human, and though they couldn't quite understand his culinary audacity, one thing was undeniable. Watching him eat was becoming oddly addictive.